everybody. I'm delighted to see you here. Hello, hello. Welcome to Sayaka's Plastic Animals, How and Why. It's an artist talk and question and answer with our renowned sculptor here, Sayaka Gans. I am Jennifer Wirtz. In case you don't know, I am the manager of the Rhine Center. I first became aware of Ms. Gans' work. It was on display, some of it was on display at Terra Community College. And some of you may know Michael Schertz. He used to be the dean there. And I know him from way back, so I was there at this event, and I was just so stunned by the beauty of her work, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got to try to seek her out. And so then fast forward many years later, here I am working at Lakeside, and then when I became the manager at the Rhine Center, I went, ooh, there's got to be an opportunity to see if I can. So I sought her out and am delighted that we have her here for this entire week. And she's our very first featured artist in residence through the Rhine Center. We asked her here this summer in honor of the Rhine Center's 25th anniversary. She'll be here all week teaching 3 classes, which I see some of you did get the handout that we put outside. Please grab one if you don't already have one. It lists the 3 classes she's teaching. And she will also be here working on a sculpture of the American white pelican, which has recently returned to our area, and it will become the property of Lakeside. So we're very excited about that. Her background. Sayaka Gans was born in Yokohama, Japan, and grew up in Japan, Brazil, and Hong Kong. She received her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from Indiana University, Bloomington, and a Master's of Fine Arts in 3D Studies at Bowling Green State University. Having lived and traveled all over the world, Gans is an expert at finding beauty in unexpected places. She uses discarded metal and plastic to depict animals and natural elements in motion. Each piece is a brushstroke, and they come together to create vibrant, complex structures which seem able to leap to life. She describes her work as 3D Impressionism. Since 2017, her traveling exhibition, Sayaka Gans Reclaimed Creations, has been shown in 15 venues across the U.S. and is booked for 5 more through the next year. Her recent commission, completed in August of 2021, is a 4-story tall installation of bird sculptures and abstract vortex swirls for the Health and Human Services building at Indiana State University. If you're curious, why does she create such sculptures? What drew her to use discarded items? What motivates her work? Well, you've come to the right place. We are honored to have Sayaka Gans here to answer those questions herself. Without further ado, Sayaka Gans.
Thank you, Jennifer. What a wonderful introduction. And thank you all for being here. Let me grab the clicker. So yes, my name is Sayaka Gans. I'm originally from Japan. I'm now living in Fort Wayne, Indiana. This is my first time at Lakeside Chautauqua, and my husband right there, he and I arrived Saturday night, and so we're still new and we're still finding our way through the complex. Let me tell you about my background, my work, and how I make the things I do and why. So this is the first image I'd like to show you. This is a pair of horses galloping out of a gallery wall. And this is still 2 of my favorite sculptures that I made, but it was built more than 10 years ago, and I think, yeah, I just love the horses. I think one of the reasons is because I used to take riding lessons as a child, and my body still remembers what it felt like. Although, unfortunately, I've become allergic to horses now, and so I don't think I can ride anymore. But the memory of the movement of the gallop and the air moving against my hair, that's still very vivid in my memory. When you get up close to my sculptures, you see that these are made of kitchen utensils, coat hangers, fan blades, lawn chair parts, things like that are probably present in every household. You might even see some of the things that are identical to what you've got in your kitchen. And by the way, I take donations if you have something you don't want. And I have a very, it's a very simple but time-consuming kind of collection and sorting method. I collect my objects mostly from thrift stores like the Salvation Army or Goodwill. And probably 90% of my materials come from them. And then some other things are collected by friends and family. Or I'll just find something in my neighbor's trash and pull it out every once in a while. But that's kind of a small percentage, actually. Mostly come from the thrift stores. And I will get like a cartload of assortment of different items, various colors, various shapes, sizes. And then I have a sorting system at home where I have bins designated for each color, and also according to size. And right now, I think I'm up to like 60 or 70 of these bins, and I have a storage unit, and storage is such a big problem for sculptors like me, and especially for people who work with found objects, because we just can't throw anything away. This is the basement of our home, and this is my half of the basement, my studio. And here you can see this is me working on the two horses, but they're not complete yet. So you can see, I'm going to point like right here at the top of the white horse's head. You see that's metal armature. It's made of aluminum that I welded. And it goes from here down into the body, and then these lines that connect to the wall. This is how the horse is suspended from the wall. And then there is one foot that touches the ground, and that's also supporting the weight. But most of the support is actually from the wall in this. So making the armature takes up about half of the time in terms of like my process for the entire sculpture. It takes a lot of planning. It's a very left brain process, I guess, and I do a lot of research for that and calculations. And then once I get to attaching the plastic, that's the part that becomes more spontaneous. And it's such a contrast, the two different stages of my process. And my love of puzzles, because I've always loved jigsaw puzzles and other types of puzzles as a child, that's part of the reason I think I enjoy putting these plastic objects together to form something else that's larger out of existing shapes. But the reason why I love working with discarded objects is that I feel so sad for them when I see all these things on the shelves at the thrift store, and I think I look at them kind of with the knowledge that, oh, you know, who's really going to buy these things to take to their home and use in their kitchen? If it's like a dirty spatula, like who's going to want to use this in the kitchen? And so I feel really bad for them. And this is my way of trying to give them a new place to belong to, where they can be really beautiful and a part of something that's alive. And I hope they can be happy. So I'll talk about the Shinto philosophy of Japan. I was born and spent my early childhood in Japan, and Shintoism is an animist belief where we are taught as children that everything has a spirit or soul. And this is one of the main belief systems in Japan, alongside Buddhism, and there's no real pressure for us to choose one or the other, so most people are raised with both philosophies integrated, and people worship old trees, beautiful old rocks, pieces of land, sacred animals, and even things that are not worshipped are still respected. And we are taught to try to be kind even to the things that are inanimate, and even a pencil or plastic spoon. And so they'll tell children that if you throw something away in the trash that are not ready to go to trash, they'll be weeping in the trash at night. And so that gave me a very vivid imagination, and also, it made me feel guilty. And I don't know if that's such a good thing, but I try to think about it as like an idea that everything in this world, even inanimate things, can potentially have feelings, and that means they can potentially be your friends. Sometimes people ask me, because of the environmental nature of my work, if I hate plastic, and so many people say that, oh, I hate plastic, and I feel bad about that too, because really, we made the plastics for our convenience, and for us to disown them, it just feels very unkind. I've lived in many different places growing up. So this is the list of all the places: Yokohama, Japan; Sao Paulo, Brazil; Saitama, Japan; Yokohama, Japan. So those are places my parents moved to Brazil, and then they moved back, and then I lived with my grandma in Saitama. We went back to Yokohama. Then we moved to Hong Kong, China. Although it was, back then it was a British colony and not back to China yet. And then for college, I came to the States, and I went to Indiana University in Bloomington. And then after I graduated, well, during that time, I met my husband, and we moved to Fort Wayne. And after a few years in Fort Wayne, I decided to go back to school in Bowling Green, and then we're back in Fort Wayne. So actually, Indiana, Fort Wayne is like the longest I've lived in one place in my life, because in my childhood, it was like every 3 years we would move, something like that. But all these places have given me great inspiration. So Brazilian wildlife, I moved there when I was 9, and in Japan, we have animals, but in the residential areas, what we have are crows, sparrows, pigeons, all these animals that are brown, gray, and black. And then all of a sudden, I'm seeing, these bright colored birds. And so that gave me a very strong impressions. And I loved animals already. So yeah, it was just fascinating to see all these big, vivid creatures. And then when I moved to Hong Kong, it was a different kind of shock, because Japan is dense, but Hong Kong is even more. And yeah, they told me that if all the people living and working in these high-rise buildings in the Hong Kong island came to the ground level at the same time, there's not enough ground for everyone to stand on, and we'd be spilling into the sea. That's how dense it is. And all these signs everywhere. Visually, it just seems so chaotic at the beginning, but I was there for about a year in high school, and I got to really love it towards the end. It really grew on me. It was so interesting. And these kinds of shapes made their way into my images later on. And then I moved to Indiana, and not all of Indiana is like this, of course, but just to show the contrast of it all. I could see the horizon, and even in the fields, there's patterns in the farm fields I really enjoy. I spent a lot of time driving between Fort Wayne and Bowling Green, which is like a lot of it's like this. Going across, it's very flat. And I got to really love this kind of landscape too. And this is Indiana University. It's a really beautiful campus. But this was the first place I had lived in the United States, in Indiana. So I think at the time I didn't really appreciate how, what a gem it is inside of Indiana. This is all I knew. It's a huge campus. And I think you can see like some of the influence from the Hong Kong signs. This is an image I made in a technique called collograph in printmaking, which is like a collage that you use as a printing block. Because I studied printmaking at the beginning, and this image is based off of these houseboats that were in a postcard that I got from Hong Kong. And just this visual kind of almost chaos, but there are sort of patterns you can find within that repeats itself over and over, that are connected together in very complicated ways. Yeah, that's what really interested me at the time. And then this image is the one that sticks with me most from art history classes. Marcel Duchamp, nude descending the staircase. This is something like I didn't actually notice until much later, but the way these lines are used to depict movement, I feel like this relates to my sculptures more than any of the other images I studied during college. And this is my husband, Christopher Gans. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, he does large self-portrait drawings in charcoal, as well as printmaking. We met in the printmaking department. I wanted to show some of his images too, because he is a great influence in my work as well. This is my favorite out of his drawings. It has such a sense of humor. But also, I have a story about this one, because to do research for this, we had to go to 5 or 6 different Walmart stores in Fort Wayne. We got kicked out of every single one of them, because it was at a time when people weren't all carrying cell phones and taking pictures inside stores. It was like with our portable little camera. And as soon as the clerks, the store attendants noticed that we were taking a lot of pictures, they came to us and took our camera away and told us to leave. And so it was a very difficult process, but it actually taught me, because this is something I would never do on my own. I only did it because he needed the reference materials. But I feel like as an artist, you should maybe willing to take certain kinds of risks for the sake of your art. And it's not like we were doing anything illegal or bad. We were just taking photos for a wonderful piece of art. During my time in Bloomington, although I had already declared my major as printmaking, I started making sculpture. And the way that happened was, let me go back to this. I took a one-day welding workshop, and I think I didn't know anything about welding at the time, but I just fell in love with it. All we had access to during that workshop was like a small pile of scrap metal that other students left behind from their projects. So there were very few things that I could choose from, but it was like a puzzle. And I got to kind of fit the shapes together, hold it just the way I wanted, and then it stuck together. And I was like, yeah, I just loved it so much. And it felt so different in my body than anything else I had done. And so I thought, oh, this is it. And I kept making more sculptures. And one of my teachers introduced me to the works by Deborah Butterfield. Have you seen any of her works? I think she's got large sculptures in most of the major cities across the states. And this is one of the sculptures I made during my undergraduate studies. And this was the piece where I felt like there's potential here, that I could make more, I could improve, and I could do something really interesting with this technique. And Chris was very encouraging, and he was a big part of me making that decision. Once I graduated, I tried selling my work in street art festivals for a couple of years. In the end, I decided it wasn't really going to work for me because I wasn't producing enough volume to be able to sell, in many of these events. I could probably do maybe 3 per year, but 3 per year isn't going to, I can't live off of 3 shows per year. So I stopped doing that after a while, but it was a good learning experience that I did that. And after a few years, so at this point, Chris and I were living in Fort Wayne. Chris became a professor of printmaking and drawing at Purdue Fort Wayne. And I started teaching there part-time as adjunct as well. But after a few years of doing that, I decided to go back to school. And I think it was because my work, although I loved working with scrap metal and making animal forms, it was becoming more kind of repetitive for me. And I felt like I could make more species of animals that I hadn't made before, but the process still remained the same. And I was getting to know my materials, and I knew I had to change something about my work. I just didn't know what. And then, when I was in grad school at Bowling Green, I was doing my research, going to different stores, hardware stores, thrift stores. And at a thrift store, I came across a bag, one of those bags that people put comforters in. But instead of a comforter, this bag was stuffed with this yellow chain. And I think it's a chain from children's swing set that's plastic. And I had been using metal chain for animals' tail or neck for a long time. So when I saw that chain that's plastic, it was the same exact shape and form, just different materials. And I started to look around and see other objects that are plastic that also have shapes that are similar to the objects that I had used in metal. At first, I wasn't really using like a single color per animal like this. I experimented a few times with other like mixtures of colors, but then in the end, I decided to do like this. And I usually do an internet image search to find the pose I'm looking for. I try to look for similar or same pose from 3 different angles, usually like a frontal view, a profile view, and a top view, so that I have a good understanding of the volume from all different viewpoints. And then, at first, I ran into some problems because there isn't a textbook on how to connect plastic objects together. I used several different types of adhesives, and they didn't really work for me. And then later on, I started to connect the items by drilling little holes and then tying them together with either zip ties or cables that are harvested from electronics. And those come coated in vinyl that's different colors. So I would also sort them by color and make them match the plastic objects that I'm using. So that's the method that in the end I think worked best, also because they give my animals some flexibility. And this is a penguin armature I'm working on in this picture, but behind me there's this horse. That's the first white horse I made. And the pictures I showed at the beginning, that was from the second white horse. So it's 2 different ones. But in this one, I started making the horse's head, and then when I got down to the base of the neck, that's when I realized that, oh, this isn't going to be able to support itself. And so I had to go back and take it all apart and then make a metal armature to go inside of it and then put it back together. And then with the metal, some of the objects didn't fit anymore, so I had to change things. So it was a lot of different trial and error process. For this penguin armature, I'm using the rabbit fence material that people use in gardening. And what I do is I make this elongated, almost football kind of shape, just for the body. And that's enough to support the whole penguin. And these penguins have these same armatures. But I spray painted white so that when you're looking up, they match with the white plastics that are at the belly of the penguins. And for me, the material does not have to be plastic. I'm interested in the fact that these are discarded objects that people no longer wanted, and I wanted to turn them into something beautiful and resilient and in motion. And I think we would waste so much less if we are able to see these objects as beautiful and therefore valuable. This is for my MFA show. So I have the horses, the cheetah, there's a crane over here, and then these penguins. My work started to get the attention of organizations that seek to educate the public about plastic pollution and environmental issues. So I got invited to make a series of 4 sculptures for the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California. So this humpback whale, the turtle, the leatherback sea turtle, the gyre, and there's one more that I'm not showing an image of, but the other one was the albatross to represent the mammals, the reptiles, the birds, and this one here on the right-hand side, this represents the gyre, which is the current that rotates and creates the garbage patches because it's always rotating and collecting towards the center. Translucent plastic objects are really beautiful when they get backlit like this. You know, they look almost like stained glass, I think. And oh, Jennifer, this is the piece you saw, this polar bear. So Dr. David Wagner invited me to submit my work to be included in a traveling group exhibition called Environmental Impact in 2013. And from there, we developed a relationship, and later he offered to curate a traveling solo exhibition of just my work, which became the traveling exhibition that Jennifer mentioned when she introduced me, called Reclaim Creations. And back when I was in school, I never thought about making prints of animals. You saw that I had made prints of these landscapes and kind of more abstract or stylized landscapes. But in 2015, I had kind of a slow period in my commissions for sculpture, and I was able to set aside some time, and I decided to explore printmaking again. And this time, I tried making animals, and I was kind of pleasantly surprised to find that when I make a collagraph using found flat plastic objects, the process is really kind of complementary to the sculptural work that I do with other found objects that are more three-dimensional. And I can make animals, and they really felt like one body of work. So this is the plate for my collagraph, that horse that I just showed. So these green pieces, if you get sushi from the grocery store, like, you know, they come with these green things. Yeah, it's called baran, and yeah, that's what these are. And then this blue piece here, this is part of a parking decal. And this whole background that's blue, it's an old pillowcase that I tore up, and there's some acrylic medium, a lot of plastic film. And I did a residency for a month at Art Farm in Marquette, Nebraska back in 2013. And there, I dug out from the dirt almost this big tractor inner tube, and I cut that into the shape of a tree. So I'm just trying to show different examples of other materials that I've explored besides these plastic objects. And in this piece, because of the experience I was having at the residency with these meeting new artists, and for a very short period relatively, some were there for just 1 week or 2 weeks. I was there for 1 month, but even the other artists that were staying a whole month, we would overlap only by a few days, some of them. And I was really kind of trying to understand, you know, how this affected me, just meeting these people for a really short period of time. And sometimes we would share like pretty intense experience together. And so I put the phrase down at the bottom. It's, you read, in Japanese, it's read ichigo ichie, which means one chance, one meeting. And it's a term that we use in the Japanese tea ceremony. And it shows how even if the same group of people met again tomorrow, it's not going to be the same experience. It's not going to be the same meeting. The energy is going to be different. So every single opportunity, every meeting is different, unique, and precious. That's what it means. Never to be repeated. This is an image I came across when I was doing research with, of what people do with tires and inner tubes. And yeah, this was kind of a shock to me, so I had to include this. Oxford tire pile. And this is not in China or in India. This is in California. Isn't that shocking? And this is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, and this is in the Pacific Ocean. But, you know, this is plastics at their ugliest, and right now we assign so little value to plastic, and so many people will say, I hate plastic. But really, this is a human behavior problem, and not a plastic, like, not because of them, plastic. And I think hating plastic is kind of like a self-hatred, and it's almost like we have a scapegoat in them. So I want us all to be more respectful of our natural resources, including the plastics, because, you know, they come from prehistoric times. They come from the oil, dinosaurs. And I think they can be beautiful and powerful. This is one of my recent commissions, Into the Sky, and this is the one that's at the Indiana State University in Terre Haute. These are the birds going up in this almost vortex spiral swirls that are made in aluminum. Yeah, and there are 21 different species of birds that are in Indiana, made of reclaimed plastic objects, attached to the semi-spiral aluminum swirls. And so as you're going up the stairs, this is very interesting architecture. You go up the stairs up to the 3rd floor in one direction, and then you turn and go the other direction the rest of the way up. And my studio practice is always changing. This was kind of a new attempt for me, having the armatures of the birds laser cut by a company. And yeah, I mean, I don't know, in terms of environment, I don't know if that's good practice or not, but it saved me so much time. Oh my goodness. Because before, I would have to like buy individual wires to make each of these lines. And then I would have to either myself drill holes in them or have an assistant drill them for me. And with these being like designed on the computer, and I could already like design holes to be pre-made too, that was so much easier in a lot of ways. So every time I have a new project, I get introduced little by little to these new technologies and new attempts, and that's very exciting to me. I wanted to show you this because this was a Kelinak. It's titled Kelinak. I did this in Turkey back in 2022. And this is based off of northern bald ibis, which is a species of birds that were very endangered in Turkey. But there was a big effort to preserve these creatures, and they were able to bring them back. And I thought, well, that's what happened here too with the pelicans. I'm going to make a sculpture of the American white pelican. It's going to be a flat piece because it's going to be a relief sculpture, but I want to use a pose that's kind of like this with the pelican in flight with motion lines, and I think it'll be a very graceful kind of piece. So I'm very excited about this project. I will be working, I think I'll schedule something like I will be working at the Rhine Center an hour each day, so you can check out my progress if you want to stop by and look. So please come by. I will definitely be having an open studio on Friday in the afternoon, and I'll be finishing up then. And now, right now, in my main studio practice, I'm feeling kind of pulled back towards metal more, actually. This is a piece that I started in 2020, and it came out of this building fire that happened right next to the makerspace called Tech Venture that I belong to, and it burned down that building completely. And so for 2 years at the makerspace, we lost the whole wall, and if we look out toward that direction where that wall was, there's this big pile of rubble. And they donated to me any metal that I wanted from that pile. And so I got to climb on it. I thought at the beginning that it might be really depressing, but when I climbed on the pile of scraps, the pile of rubble, it was kind of devastating in one way, but I felt really inspired because all the damage had already been done. This is what it actually looked like. And so there's this pile, well, you can't really see in this picture, but right behind me is this pile that's high, like probably like 10 feet high, that I could climb to the top. And when I looked down, yeah, all the damage was already finished. And the only thing left was new ideas, new possibilities of what I can do with these materials. And of course, I'm not saying like, people lost their whole business. And nobody died, fortunately, and any beautiful sculpture that I make isn't going to be able to replace something like that. But I felt this surge of optimism going to that spot. And I recently finished it and brought it. A friend of mine helped me from Tech Venture, and we drove through Chicago and Milwaukee, mostly on highways, on this pickup truck with a horse in the back. And she got installed in Mankato, Minnesota, for this walking sculpture tour. It's going to be there for the next year. So yeah, I don't know what'll happen next. I might focus more on metal for a while, but it's really mostly like what people ask me to do. So I'm just right now I'm kind of waiting to see what happens next. So, okay, this is the end of my talk. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer. Yes?
That was delightful.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the Trash to Treasure upcycled jewelry?
Oh, yeah.
Project is, do you have stuff?
I have a lot of stuff.
Yes.
But it's mostly going to be like turning plastic spoons, like the bowl part of the spoons, clipping that off and filing down the edge to make it smooth, and then drilling a hole. And I have all these hardware to make them into earrings or like a neck pendant kind of thing. Yeah, so it's very quick. You can stop by for 5 minutes and make one thing, or if you want to stay a while and do several things, you can do that. It's going to be very free and flowing, and it should be really fun and easy. Yes?
So it's interesting to me that instead of describing your pieces being held together by diaphragm or armature,
Yeah.
I would have thought you would have showed a skeleton or like a light form. So how did you come to call it an armature?
I think it's just a sculpture term. But yeah, it is kind of a skeleton. I think there's just something we use interchangeably in sculpture.
Any other questions?
Oh, no, some are larger than life, well, especially if they're small animals. And then I've made like whales that are 5 feet long, or one of the next pieces I'll be making is a seagull that's only like about 8 inches long. And so I can scale things down or up, except going very small is almost as hard as going very large, because for different reasons, because of the availability of materials and the fragility of the materials. When you go small, they're very delicate, so I have to be really, really careful, and I can't use too much force. I can't drill too hard, or I might break something. And so yeah, the most comfortable size for me is like maybe between like 3 feet and 5 feet, something like that range, like the size of a large dog or a penguin. Yes. Yeah, well, if you come to Fort Wayne, there are several metal pieces outside that you can visit. And also at the Fort Wayne Museum of Art, I have a couple of jellyfish that light up. That's in the children's section. It's downstairs. And there's a permanent piece in Florida, in Cape Canaveral or Port Canaveral, which is like where a lot of the cruise ships depart from. And that's at the Exploration Tower. And the pieces at the Monterey Bay Aquarium that I showed in the presentation as well. Oh, that's a traveling show, and right now it's in Milwaukee, or not in Milwaukee, Green Bay, Wisconsin, and after that it's going to Texas. I have a full itinerary on my website, but I don't think it's booked yet for after Texas, because it's going to be in Texas for a year after this. Yes?
What about international
pieces in other countries as well. I have a permanent exhibit in Korea that's at this the lobby of the spa at the resort near the Incheon airport. And what else do I have? I have like private commissions that are international. I have a pair of horses. The original pair of horses are in London at Ripley's Believe It or Not. But I don't really talk about that one very much because I wasn't very happy with the way they displayed it. It was like from back when I wasn't very experienced at shipping my objects. And they said they'll take care of it, but they shipped it to London in the same crate that I used to, like, for somebody to just deliver it to them, you know, in Florida. And I think that didn't work so well. And some of the plastics came loose and they're dangling. And so I wasn't very happy with, like, they just left it like that. They didn't tell me. And when I approached them, because I was like going through London one time, they wouldn't pay for my hotel one night to like come and fix it. And so, yeah, I just don't know if that's the one you should see. Yes.
Is there an animal that you have not done yet that you would be interested in exploring?
There are so many animals that I haven't done yet, but I was like,
I just wondered if there was anything on your mind that you were hoping to see someday.
maybe a dinosaur.
Wondering if you had done
No, I haven't.
that would be a neat message about the recycling plastic.
Oh, yeah.
The dinosaur. It seemed like there might be some kind of a message there.
I love that.
Appreciated the way you shared your heart and your feelings, your philosophy. It's very moving.
Oh, thank you.
I have Native American heritage.
Oh, really?
For to hear you talk about the sacredness of all things, it really connects with me.
Oh,
But it is dangerous because if you save everything that has
Mhm.
potential, you just need to see some of our houses in my family. And
yeah.
who does art out of reclaimed objects, and it's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But it takes an amazing creative spirit to think of potential in these things. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you. I really appreciate your comment, and I would love to hear more about it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Oh, yes.
So I'm curious, how does an artist such as yourself make money? Traveling shows, do you get a commission or a percentage for each city that you go, or a time period? Do you have to sell your pieces one by one to people who want to buy them? Are you self-funded?
Yeah.
The monetary aspect of what you do, kind of expand on that in your experience.
Oh, that is a very difficult problem for artists like myself. Yes. So, I mean, I make money however I can. It's like there isn't really a set kind of rate for any of this. That's the most difficult thing. You know, there isn't a set rate for how to price your sculptures. There isn't a formula that everyone agrees on. For the traveling show, I get paid if a venue invites me to give a presentation or a workshop or something like that, like additional service in addition to the exhibit itself. But for the exhibit itself, I don't get paid, although my curator gets paid for it. But you know, he's doing all the work of arranging the shows themselves and booking them and then dealing with the problems and the insurance and shipping and everything. So that's what he gets paid for. most of my work right now, because as I mentioned at the beginning, the storage becomes such a big problem, and also it gets expensive to store things. You know, I have a storage unit that I have to move every couple of years just to keep them from raising the price on me. And so mostly I work on commission basis. I take the order first from a client that wants something and pays me a deposit, and then I'll make the sculpture, because I can't really keep producing inventory without having a solution for the storage. And yeah, our house is pretty much full capacity. My storage is at full capacity. So yeah, it's a difficult problem. Can't say that I have a great solution. It helps that my husband has the teaching job and he has the insurance and the Social Security and things like that. And but I know that for a lot of artists who are single or who are both self-employed, it's really tough. Just getting insurance for artists is really difficult. Yeah. Yes.
Kind of connected to that, how did you initially start getting your work displayed and getting it out there and pay for it?
I think the way I started at the beginning when I was right out of school was I just started applying to as many shows that are juried shows as possible. I also entered to like local non-juried exhibitions, but I thought that juried ones that are a little bit more competitive to get into would be better after a while for my resume and to get recognized. And some of those did lead to other opportunities. And I think you can't necessarily see immediately how that's helping your career, but it's an investment maybe you have to make for a while. And after a while, though, it got very expensive just to move my work from one place to another, just to go and drive my piece 3 hours down with a rented truck when I'm not getting paid for it. It's a big investment to make. And so after a few years, I realized I couldn't keep doing that. And then I started saying no to the places that weren't going to pay me anything for these shows. And I started focusing more on shows that were funded or residencies that were funded with a stipend or some kind. And but it just seemed like kind of a transition that took a while. There were a couple years in between where I would still say yes to some things, and I wasn't all that consistent with it. If you pushed me hard enough, I would say yes to this thing that I, probably shouldn't have. And yeah, I probably still do some of that. But yeah, it's kind of a struggle, but I feel like it's kind of working now. Last year was hard, but this year is so much better. And thanks to opportunities like this one, thanks to Jennifer for reaching out to me. Yeah, I really appreciate being here. Yeah, thank you so much. And you can find me later if you have more questions.